Good evening and welcome everyone to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting for Thursday, September 14th, 2017. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 6, 2017. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 6, 2017. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 6, 2017.
Thank you. Would you please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. Motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, before we begin our meeting tonight, we have the distinct pleasure and honor of welcoming our newest committee member, committee person, committeeman, to the committee meeting tonight. As many people know, John Maurer resigned earlier this summer, and we again thank him for his efforts and his hard work on the committee and wish him and his family the best as they continue on their pursuits in North Carolina. So at this time, we'll invite Typhoon Celine to come on up for the oath of office administered by Greg. And invite your family members up as well. And we'll get out of the photo op.
Say aye.
I,
Keep your name in full.
Typhoon Celine,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established in the United States
and in this state
and in this state
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people.
I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
all the duties of the office
of Township
Committee member
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And sir, I need your signature.
Typhoon, you want a family photo? You want to get everyone up? Come on up.
Mom, Dad, everyone. They look a little reluctant. Thank you.
Your brother want to get it too, or?
No.
No? All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Indeed.
All right. my
Thank
brother.
you.
Way to go.
Thank you.
And now that we're a committee of five, I'll do another roll call. Mr. Celine? Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. All right, before we continue, we've got a proclamation tonight. It's the Suicide Prevention Month. This is actually September 10th to the 14th, the Suicide Prevention Week. As many people know, this has been a topic that I've tried to bring attention to over the past couple of years, and with the full support of the committee, so I appreciate the support of the committee and the Department of Health and others in town to bring this to light. and I'll read it right now. Whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is committed to increasing awareness of suicide prevention and wishes to recognize the importance of suicide awareness in our community. Whereas suicide claimed more than 41,000 lives in 2013 in the United States, with someone dying by suicide every 12.8 minutes. Whereas a suicide attempt is made every minute of every day, resulting in nearly 1 million attempts annually. Whereas the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is a multifaceted organization made up of esteemed scientists, dedicated survivors and suicide loss, people with mental disorders and their families, and an expansive network of business and community leaders. Whereas the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is at once a grassroots movement, a support network, an educator, a professional research organization, and a grant-making foundation that organizes hundreds of events in communities across the country, raising millions of dollars each year to support its work both locally and nationally. Whereas the Committee of the Township of Chatham has partnered with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to host Talk Saves Lives, a community-based presentation on suicide prevention. And whereas this Committee of the Township of Chatham, after hosting its inaugural Out of the Darkness Walk in 2016, that raised in excess of $75,000 among 500 participants, will host its second annual Out of the Darkness Walk on September 23rd, 2017 at Cougar Field to further increase the awareness of suicide prevention and raise funds for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Whereas the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention remains an advocate for social change, supporting policies that contribute to reducing and preventing suicides nationwide, and encouraging all individuals who may be in crisis to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. Now therefore I, Kurt Ritter, Mayor of the Township of Chatham, do hereby proclaim the month of September in the Township of Chatham, New Jersey, as American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Month. And with that, we have one of our committee members for our Out of the Darkness Walk, Detective Laporto. I'll present this to you on behalf of the Walk Committee. If you want to come on up, and everyone else can come on down, and we'll do a photo op. Thank you.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Great.
All right, we'll move on to our reports. Typhoon, you want to start us off?
I had nothing.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. The Municipal Alliance had its first meeting of the school year this past week, and it really dovetails with what you just read, Mayor. You usually think of the Municipal Alliance in terms of drug and alcohol prevention, but they really are trying to get at the causes behind those in terms of loneliness and stress and bullying and a lot of things which really are tied in with all those issues that people suffer from and potentially end tragically. So they have a lot of good new members, PTA representatives from all the different school districts, so it looks like the start of a good year for the Municipal Alliance. Separately, the Chatham Community Garden is in the middle of a bumper crop harvest, so they're going great guns. And as we come to the end of the year, I just want to put out the word to all the people out there who would like to become more involved in gardening. At the end of every year, some of the plot holders are unable to continue for the new year. They're for one reason or another. So the end of the year is when we reassess and reassign available garden plots. So if you are thinking about getting into gardening in a bigger way, I would recommend that you log on to the Chatham Township webpage, click on the community garden link, and download the application forms and also the background information forms to make sure it's what you're looking for. But now is the time to submit an application and to get more involved. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. The joint court met, and as the chair of the joint court, Chatham Township this year, I can report that it is running as efficiently and smoothly as ever. I think it's a testament to the shared services that we have performed in this town. Certainly the joint court is probably the finest joint court in all of the state, and that a lot of credit goes to the founding members, and Tom helped put that together, our administrator, along with 3 other of our neighboring towns, Madison and Chatham Borough and Harding. So I just salute the work that was originally done on that, and it continues to run extremely efficient, and it is, as I've said before, it continues to pay dividends. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Karen?
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I want to say that when you talk about having the support of the Township Committee on your suicide awareness walk, it is inarguable that you have the support of the entire community, not just those of us who sit here on the dais, but the great turnout, the buzz around town, the way people are really pouring out in support of your initiative has been admirable, and I know it'll continue to swell. So it's not just the 4 of us who support your initiative, but I really believe the entire community does. So really well done, and an extremely important cause. I would like to say that things are really starting to pop for the fall with our seniors. They'll be ready to kick off pickleball. It's a great game. You can envision large ping pong or small paddle tennis. They will be doing it right here in the Mountain View Gym. Also, the senior bus is going to be running on Mondays. That's something new. I noticed a Facebook page during the impending troubles with Hurricane Harvey and Irma about some family members, some seniors, who were being relocated to come up and stay in the Chathams with their families. And these seniors are always welcome at our senior center right here in Mountain View. You don't have to be a member of Chatham Township or Chatham Borough to take advantage of the great program. So please visit them online, look at the schedules, look at the activities. There's something new every day for our seniors there. It's a great asset that we have here. And our Department of Public Works, we had a great conversation today, Rich and I did, about the transition between summer and fall, which is always painful for many of us, myself included. They are breaking down Colony Pool and checking out the salt spreaders and snow plows at the same time, striping our fields for soccer and other fall sports. So you'll see them around town, as always, taking great care of our township. They have completed all of the crosswalks and stop lines for our pedestrian safety, particularly our kids walking to school, and doing their general work around town with tree trimming and potholes, storm basins, etc. We've had a couple of water main breaks in my neighborhood not long ago, and people are concerned about the storm basins operating. If there's ever any concern, folks, just pick up the phone and call our Department of Public Works. They'll come out, they'll take a look. They're more than happy to make sure that you feel your neighborhood is safe. Additionally, we can look around the parking lot here and know that the lighting has all been redone. We had trouble with the contractor a number of years ago in typical Chatham Township Department of Public Works fashion. They said, well, you know, we can't rely on somebody else, we'll do it. So they've done a great job, as well as replacing one light bulb after another with LED, better efficient lighting. They'll be conducting their extra equipment online auction going forward in October. We'll hear more about that as we get into October. That'll be the 21st through 28th for our extra equipment that's taking up space and may be able to be sold for some profit. And last but not least, our recycling depot is getting a new look because our trash compactor is there. The entire DPW team has been trained on operating the compactor. We're waiting for one shakedown cruise or another. There's a part that we're still waiting on. They've left the 30-yard roll-offs there just to try and ensure a smooth transition for our residents who have become so fond of bringing their recycling down on Saturdays or Tuesdays. So look for more update on that. We'll probably start it on a Tuesday when we don't have a full load of Saturday morning recyclers. But we'll see how it all works, and we ask for patience as we go through that, and that's what I have, Your Honor.
Great, thank you, Karen. Dick? quick couple of things on my end. I'd be remiss if I didn't remind folks that New Jersey Monthly earlier this summer recently announced that Chatham Township was ranked the #2 best town to live in New Jersey. So I think that is a testament to all of the employees here in our township, our police department, DPW, Tom, Greg, everyone in this building, obviously all the volunteers in our community who make this such a great place to live and raise a family. So congratulations to everyone. It's great to see the recognition that Chatham Township received from New Jersey Monthly. The other thing I want to make mention of, on our website, you'll note there's a Congressional Award Program sponsored by Congress. People can find information on that further on the website, but here's basically we're inviting young men and women ages 14 to 23 to participate in the Congressional Award Program. It's America's Award for Youth. Congress established the Congressional Award in 1979 to recognize initiative, service, and achievement in young people. So it'd be great if we had some of our residents come up and fill out the application and participate. It's a great thing. Third thing I want to talk about is our Public Safety Committee. We met earlier this week, had a number of issues on the plate, everything from updating our deer ordinance to include bears. So we're going to look into that a little bit further. We talk about some of our crosswalks in town, how we can make them safer. We revisited the idea of creating a pedestrian safety week later this fall. We also talked about potential further enforcement and speeding in town to address issues that have been raised by many residents in our town. The chief will give a report and talk a little briefly about this idea as well. And then just want to remind people, as it's speaking about public safety, that as we enter the winter months, just remind everyone to register for Act Now, which is our community and emergency alert program. We've seen that program grow exponentially over the years. People not only registering to like us on Facebook to get alerts and updates, but certainly to register for these alerts that are either texted to them or sent by email, and sometimes, if necessary, you can call you at home. I also want to mention Colony Pool. Obviously ended a successful season this past summer, perhaps one of the most successful seasons on record with the rebuilt wall and everything else. So kudos to the folks over at Colony Pool, as well as Tom for managing it and everything else. And that's all I have on my plate right now. John Rushke is at the zoning board meeting, but he'll be coming back in. Defer to the chief if you want to give a... You want to say anything? What's that?
I wasn't prepared to give a report.
Okay. Very good. We'll go to Tom then.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to flesh out a couple of the items on the consent agenda so that everybody's up to speed when you get to that portion of the agenda. The last four resolutions, 166, 7, 8, and 9. The 166 is notable in that it is the renewal of our participation in the Morris County Municipal JIF. For those who don't know, JIF is the Joint Insurance Fund. And what the JIF is a group of Morris County municipalities. There are several JIFs around the state. The Morris County is municipalities that participate jointly in basically self-insuring ourselves for general liability and workers' compensation insurance rather than buying insurance on the open market. It's an insurance pool. It also includes participation in the New Jersey Municipal Excess Liability Fund, known as the MEL, which provides basically reinsurance for large claims to all of the JIFs. All of the JIFs around the state participate in the MEL. MEL is the umbrella over all of it. That happens to be another cost saving for us. When we moved from the previous insurance that we were doing to the JIF, going back at this point, I lose track of time, but it's probably 6 or maybe even 9 years ago. There were substantial savings involved for us, and we've continued to see those savings on an annual basis. I'd also like to go back and comment or supplement what former Mayor Sullivan said about the joint court. He was modest in saying that it's paid dividends. I think everybody should be reminded of what those dividends are. When we ran our own municipal court, our costs were in the neighborhood of about $250,000 a year, and now we're at about $65,000 a year. So we're saving nearly $200,000 each and every year that we participate in the joint court. So it was more than modest dividends. It's a huge savings, and it's permanent, built into the budget annually. So I just wanted to reiterate that. And again, it's another example of shared service with our neighbors. As you all know, we have many joint things with the borough. This one happens to be a joint program that we do, as the mayor said, with Harding Township, Chatham Borough, Madison, and Morris Township, I think, is also a member. They came in last year. So it's an example of how we do, in fact, corroborate with our neighbors and save our township taxpayers substantial amounts of money. 167 is a change order that basically closes out the paving projects that we did this summer, the Dale Drive neighborhood, the Van Houten neighborhood, and amounted to an increase over the original award, but it's still under the estimate that the engineer originally put together. But as you recall, we decided to accelerate the paving this year because the costs were good. The asphalt costs were good because of the price of oil. So the estimated quantities, we did wind up exceeding those. So the change order here is for an additional, I think, $58,000 added to the original contract, but still comes out well under what we had budgeted for the overall projects. The 168 is one that I certainly hope 168 and 169 you're not going to have a problem with, because this work is already done. Authorizing the paving of Lafayette Avenue. You'll recall during the summer when we were on hiatus, I had emailed all of you to just let you know we had the opportunity to work with New Jersey American Water, and their obligation following the water main installation was to restore the paving, basically just their trench and the side of the road that the trench was located, from the curb out about a foot beyond the trench. We met in the field with them. Ed spied on us and got some pictures. And we were able to work it out with New Jersey American to pave the whole length of the roadway from curb to curb, taking advantage of our ability to use the county co-op prices, which were better than the price they had from their contractor. So we kind of on the fly made a deal for them to give us the money that they were going to spend on paving, and we were then able to use that to pave the whole roadway. So that's how that played out. They gave us $210,000, or at that time a commitment to give us $210,000. I'm pleased to tell you we actually received the check today. So the budget amendment here makes reference to $210,000 that will be available. It is available. It's in the bank. And then 169 was the formal authorization, or basically acknowledging and authorizing what we already did. So please vote favorably for that one.
Very good. Thank you, Tom.
Tom, can I just, first of all, reiterate that it took a real communication and then nimble adapting of our municipal schedule and your flexibility, as well as knowing the lay of the land with New Jersey American Water and where we stood, because I think that was a monumental thing. We could have just let New Jersey American Water go through with their contract and do what they promised to do, pave half of Lafayette Avenue and half here and half there, and for a road that's really heavily traveled by a lot of our residents every day. I think it worked out well, and I thank you very much for working with them, which is, I think, something kind of new.
And we should commend them, because they were very cooperative. It was a great deal. I think it was a win-win for both of us, and they do work closely with us. You've been great in establishing a relationship with them where they communicate. I mean, I get more emails from them than I really need. I get emails now when they're doing maintenance up in Roxbury, but the way it is.
Like I said, also, we get an email from JCP&L when a squirrel falls off a pole in Jefferson now, but at least it's a line of communication we didn't have before. Tom, can you comment on the project that's going on Woodland Ave at this point, or should we wait for John to come back? There's a lot of work going on down there, a lot of big vehicles. They've redone the intersection as well at the corner of Lewanika and Woodland. if you can comment on that whole thing.
The intersection of Lewanika and Woodland, I don't think we have anything to do with that.
No, I don't
That's
think
not
we
our
do.
project.
It's
county.
either
We're
County
putting
Road
in-
or
Yeah,
Madison.
I don't really know the details of that, so I won't comment on it.
Okay.
The project that we are doing with the state grant that we received is the walkway that goes from Treadwell up to the entrance, and I guess beyond the entrance a little bit to connect to the existing walkway at the Geralda Farms property. That work is ongoing. I believe they may have installed the fence at this point and should be getting ready to, okay, so they should be getting ready to pave the actual walkway soon. We will then also be going back and paving the shoulders of the road that we had left off when we
Right.
paved Woodland 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So that work is ongoing, and I think, as far as I know, it's progressing smoothly.
Yeah, and by and large, that'll get pedestrian traffic off the cartway, right? The pedestrian roadway will now be the
Yeah,
pedestrian.
well, there will be,
roadway.
I think, a complete loop around that entire property where, you know,
Except for Treadwell.
Except for Treadwell. There will not be a paved walkway on Treadwell. But from Treadwell on Woodland, all the way around till you come back at the other end of Treadwell in Madison, there will be a paved walkway that makes it safe for
Great.
people.
It's
a
going
big project.
to enhance the overall attractiveness of Geralda.
No doubt.
The preserve, and also for those who want to walk around, who do that loop.
All the time.
Certainly, they're going to come off the road now. It's going to make it a lot safer.
All right, thank you, Tom. And just speaking of sidewalks and such, I probably should make mention of the fact, if it hasn't been reported already, that our request for funding through install sidewalks over on Snake Hill was denied by the Department of Transportation. They said this year solicitations generated 133 applications totaling over 100 million and requests for approximately $27 million in available funding. Unfortunately, Southern Boulevard and River Road sidewalk improvement project was not among those selected. But they encourage us to apply again in the future, so we will. But I just want to bring that's everyone's attention.
Great.
And on the subject of sidewalks, I'm sure if John were here, he would be reporting that there's no progress to report on the Safe Routes to School sidewalk projects for either Lafayette or Shunpike. I don't know what the bottleneck is at DOT, but the project is just not moving. We've had correspondence again this week, emails back and forth, trying to nudge them to, get it moving. The holdup is not at our end. I just want to emphasize that for people that are questioning what's going on. The holdup is at the state level.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions?
I actually do, and Chief, we talked about public safety in our subcommittee meeting earlier this week, and I've said many times, the one real concern that I hear from our neighbors regarding public safety over and over and over is the speeding on our local streets. They're speeding in our neighborhoods. You can't blame the young kids all the time. You can't blame out-of-towners all the time. We've talked about speed bumps. We hear it from the neighbors all the time. If you were to install a speed bump on a thoroughfare, you've got traffic now slowing down to about 21, 18 miles an hour. You just can't do that. We really need to ask for the respect of our drivers. We need the respect of our motorists, that they're driving through people's neighborhoods. They're driving where kids are playing. They're driving where kids are walking to school. And we just beg our motorists to respect the speed limit and respect the fact that they're driving through a neighborhood. It's the biggest complaint that I hear year in, week in and week out.
I just wanted to touch base on one thing. Myersville Road project.
Good point.
We'll be starting the beginning of next week with the catch basins. Traffic will be allowed to move in both directions during that part of the project. Once the actual milling starts and the paving starts, it's a pretty big project. It goes from Fairmont Avenue all the way out past the Myersville Circle, probably a couple hundred feet on the other side. So I think what they intend to do is mill one pass back and forth and then pave portions of it like they did on Lafayette Avenue. But once they start to mill and pave, the only way for us to make this work is for one-way traffic. And in the pre-construction meeting, they decided that the traffic was going to flow only eastbound from Long Hill because the detour is much easier here to send cars down to River Road and then west on River Road out, and then it'll be marked out in that direction. I know it's going to be difficult for the residents that live along the corridor on Myersville Road and those wanting to get to the municipal building. So the idea for people in town who want to get to the municipal building is to use Mountain View Avenue on the side over here. And for residents who live along the corridor and on Myersville Road, if they could possibly, ahead of the project, look for a secondary way home up over from River Road, either up through Lisa Drive or Dogwood or in that direction. So when they hit River Road, they can come back eastbound and then find their ways to their home.
Chief, that starts on the 18th?
I think it's starting Monday with the catch basins.
Okay. Can we send out another alert
Yeah,
to folks?
we'll be on top of it. We'll try to send something out every day to keep people advised. I don't think Myersville Road westbound is used as frequently as like Lafayette Avenue, Noe, and all those other feeder roads. So there'll be plenty of signs out, and we'll certainly help people get home.
Yeah,
For some people, it's very frustrating because they only know one way home.
And I know once you start sending out these alerts on a more constant basis, we'll get complaints that we send out too many. But on the flip side, we get complaints that we don't send out enough. So
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah, it's a catch-22.
It is.
And just to touch on the speeding issue, you know, there are a number of neighborhoods over the years where we've gotten complaints about speeding, and we go out and we do a comprehensive speed survey, and we come to find out that although there are cars that speed on certain roads at certain times, when you look at the numbers, there isn't an overall problem. What's really disturbing for me, especially over the years, is that, you know, it's very unique with traffic enforcement because we have a great deal of discretion as officers on whether or not to issue a summons. But part of the problem is when we go into these neighborhoods and we do selective enforcement, a number, or if not a good majority of the people that we stop are township residents, which is somewhat disturbing. But we're going to get to a point where that discretion, although I can't take it away from my officers, we're going to have a little less discretion and more traffic enforcement, which is going to mean more summonses being issued. And that's not how we like to educate the public, through enforcement. So I stand here today essentially asking people to be a little more aware of the speed limit on the roadways in the township that you're traveling on, and keep it close there too. Other than that, that's all I have.
Chief, how many of those units do we have that display your speed as you're approaching have the speed limit itself posted on the sign and then displaying your speed?
Right now we have one. They're not inexpensive, especially the one that we have, the big yellow one. That does quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somewhere along the line we'll look to add to them. But you know, even the little ones that you see on the signs, they're upwards of $1,000 more.
Yeah, I do find them effective though when I'm driving,
Speeding.
when I'm speeding. But so just as we're coming up to budget time, if you could think about that.
Yeah, we'll look to add, certainly.
Okay.
Outside of that, I think the other one thing that we touched on at the public safety meeting the other night, and I stand here every spring, and I talk about how we usually see an increase in property crimes once the warm weather hits. You know, and I can stand here today saying that we've seen a great reduction actually in property crimes this summer. You know, and I give credit not only to my officers, but to the community policing program, to the neighborhood watch program, and the partnership that the police department has made with the community. You know, the crime numbers are low, and the accolades that we've gotten on a national level because of low crime, and I think it's a testament to everybody. So that's my report.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, we'll now open this up for a hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. Would like to come forward? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
John Strelkoff, 544 Green Village Road. And I don't know all of the exact details about the mayor's suicide prevention program, but this is a program that, you know, crosses party lines. It goes beyond politics. So, you know, the whole community should come out and try to support this effort. And also a quick comment on the shared services. The figures that you gave are very, very good. And I know that, different services are going to give us different savings, but we saved 75% by having a joint court with Madison. The last little thing I'll say, as far as speeding, there seems always to be radar traps around with the police. They seem to do a really good job of being on the road and keeping the speed down. But a problem is we have tailgaters, people tailgating. And in my case, and I don't know if this applies to other drivers, it's very distracting when you have somebody, right behind you and you're trying to drive down these country roads. So anyway, that will be the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll close out the hearing of citizens. We have an introduction of an ordinance tonight. It's ordinance 2017-12. It's a bond ordinance for open space purchase. This bond ordinance is to authorize the acquisition of real property for open space purposes in, by, and for the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $2 million to pay for the cost thereof, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriations, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in the anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. Kevin, I know you've been lead on this. Do you want to say anything about this particular?
Well, I'm just happy that we're here. This is really probably started 3 years ago, maybe longer now. And it's a piece of property that I think will certainly joins another piece of open space property. It's a nice buffer into town. I want to thank Joe Bosrelli and his leadership on the Open Space Committee for really doing some early due diligence work on it, as well as reestablishing contact and allowing this property to go forward. There are 3 parties associated with this purchase, and one of the parties was very committed to preserving this for open space. So I think at the appropriate time we will thank her, but it's been an ongoing process, and we're happy to finally have a signed contract and to be able to put forth this ordinance.
Great.
And I think it's just, obviously everyone's aware of the development the potential development that might be taking place in town, and just, another level of commitment to trying to somewhat offset that with open space and preserve what we can while allowing smart development to go forward.
Yep. Now, I know, Mike, you're our liaison to open space. You have any?
Open Space Committee certainly endorses this and supports it, thinks it's a valuable acquisition and will have a big impact in preserving the sense that we have for Chatham Township as the open space community that it is. So,
I'd also like to comment that we are able to be creative in finding the funds to purchase this piece of property. We're not raising taxes to purchase a piece of property of this magnitude, nearly $2 million. We have looked to grants, we've looked to bonding issues, we've looked to creatively pulling together the financing to make this property purchase happen without raising taxes in our township. When we heard that this property was going to be up for sale in one shape or another, the residents along River Road, the residents in the Heritage Green condominium complex were very concerned, because you look around at available open space and it's the fear that you're going to see some kind of development there. So we were able to do what's right for the township, to do what's right for our residents without raising taxes to do it. So I'm very proud of the committee for having done that. I'm proud of our administration for having been able to work together to get this done.
Thank you. And again, just to reiterate, obviously, I think it's reflective of the commitment of the committee to open space. And we're very pleased with this purchase, and we look forward to it taking place. Tom?
Can I just explain the numbers real briefly?
Please.
The ordinance authorizes $2 million. The actual purchase price of the property is $1.8 million, and then there's $200,000 here for the demolition cost. There are 3 structures or more, 3 homes and some other outbuildings that need to be demolished and this site cleaned up. And then it also covers the so-called soft costs, the engineering and surveys and title insurance and all that kind of stuff that is all part of the purchase. So that's how you get to the $2 million. And $500,000 of the purchase price, not the soft cost, but just of the purchase price, comes from a Green Acres grant. So our ultimate authorization here is $1.5 million of our own money. We may or may not spend all of that. I suspect when all is said and done, there will still be some left over that'll get canceled.
Great. Did you have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Mr. Solin? Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
And Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
And public hearing will be 2 weeks from tonight on September the 28th.
Thank you. We now have the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda? Motion to approve?
Would you like me to read the list?
All right. Why not?
Resolution 2017-160, payment of bills. 2017-161, approving meeting minutes. 2017-162, approving executive session minutes. 2017-163, releasing escrow balances. 2017-164, refunding permit fee. 2017-165, colony pool refund. 2017-166, renewal of participation in Morris County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund. 2017-167, authorizing change order. 2017-168, amending 2017 budget, New Jersey American Water funding for Lafayette Ave paving, and 2017-169, authorizing Lafayette Ave paving project.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Solin?
Should I mean, are we voting for the entire?
Correct.
Okay, so if I say yes, that
Yes
means
to all.
everything?
Yep.
Okay, can I abstain one or two of them? or-
Sure. Just
Okay.
call them out.
And I will say yes to all except for 8. I'm just going to abstain because I have no idea about the numbers at this point.
Okay, so that's the change order.
Yeah.
And Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Moving right along, we have 2 items for discussion tonight. The first one is entitled Recognizing Township Veterans. This is something I sent around to the committee members. The other day I was passing by Southern Boulevard and Southern Boulevard School, and I think if you go there, you'll see on the left-hand side is the entrance. There's a monument there to World War I veterans, and I thought to myself, kind of an odd place to have a war memorial, and thinking, you know, the Green Village has a memorial in their volunteer square there, and I thought there might be an opportunity for us to take a step back and look at, you know, and see what we could do to basically recognize all of our veterans who have served their country and lost their lives in service to our country, and how we might best honor and recognize their service to our country. So I just want to bring it to a discussion at the committee tonight. Obviously, this would be something we'd work towards finding a place in town. An idea was maybe putting it at Shunpike Field. You know, Chatham Township doesn't necessarily have a center of town per se, but Shunpike Field certainly is a place in town that is highly trafficked by families and others from our town and other towns, as it were. So one was a discussion as to where we might put a monument or memorial, as it were, and even the consideration at some point of maybe perhaps changing the name of Shunpike Field to Veterans Field or something along those lines. But I have a call into Frelinghuysen's office to see how we can identify those members of Chatham Township who've served their country and lost their lives, as I said, and also going to reach out to the Morris County veterans folks to see if they could help track down that list of folks as well. So I open it up for discussion. If anyone has thoughts, ideas, talking with Tom about this as well. It'd be something we'd obviously, we're not going to do this halfway, so to speak. We're going to spend our time and design it properly to put something really respectable, as I said, in honor of the fine men and women who've given their life in service to our country.
I guess I'll,
As our Marine.
So Kurt, I just, Mayor, I want to applaud you for thinking of this. You know, I think it's wonderful to recognize veterans wherever and whenever we can. Certainly, your suicide initiative, it's certainly not lost on the fact that it's not immune suicide to veterans, and it's certainly has impacted them at a very high rate. So I appreciate not only your work on that, but bringing this up. I think certainly, I'd be more than happy to work as far as with the committee and Captain Salvis back there behind the man who makes it all happen behind the screen. Certainly is willing to lend a hand in this process. I knew about that World War I, and I kind of had the same thoughts myself, like how did that get there? I think it'd be wonderful to bring in the Historical Society and have them, they have a wealth of knowledge. Jan Williams, I know at the county, has done an oral history on veterans throughout Morris County, and many of them from right here in Chatham Township. So I think we could work with her and try to come up with some ideas, like you said.
That's great.
I think logistically, your idea of working around the area of Shunpike Field is great. We've got parking for ceremonies that we could have there. Perhaps that spit of woods between the two parking lots there might be a place that we could use to make it Veterans Field or Memorial Park at Shunpike Field. I think that would be great. It certainly is a focal point. It's a place where people come from far and wide for sporting events, out of town. And I think it would be a very nice feature at a place where we have a lot of families gathering. So logistically, I think the area around Shunpike Field with maybe some of the wooded area, we could clear it. The parking is certainly great for usage during a ceremony of sorts. So, well played, I think, really, Your Honor. Good job.
Anyone else? Or?
I agree. I think it's an excellent idea, and I think the strategy of pulling together different people with background knowledge and some real ideas and insights into the best way to do it is the right approach.
Great.
No comments, I support it. It's a great idea.
Great. Okay, well, I guess there's kind of consensus, I guess, from this point, we'll talk amongst ourselves, or we'll figure out what the next steps are. But if anyone in the community here has an interest in getting involved and learning more, I encourage you to email me at mayor@chathamtownship-nj.gov. You can just go online as well, obviously, on our contact page on our website. You can contact the committee members directly there. But we'll move forward with this. Kevin, you had a great idea working with Jane, and as I said, we'll move forward and come up with ideas, so stay tuned on this, but I'm very happy that we're in agreement to move forward on this. The second item for discussion is pipelines, and this is specific to an ordinance that Chatham Borough and other municipalities had passed in recent weeks, months, as it relates to the Pilgrim Pipeline. Tom just went to get John Rushke, our township engineer. That was a model template ordinance that was distributed to various municipalities. We had reviewed it ourselves, and in the review of it, we certainly could have introduced it and probably passed it and been done with it. But in reviewing it, we didn't think that it really had enough teeth to it. So what we've decided to do, under the direction of John Rushke, is to review this ordinance and see what we can do to actually tailor it to Chatham Township, so that in fact it does have more teeth to it and has a greater impact in the prevention of pipelines in our township. So we will play the music as we wait for John to enter the room here. But I don't know if anyone has any comments in general as it relates. People should understand that when it comes to pipeline ordinances, under the direction of Mayor Sullivan, we were in fact the leader in this arena. 2 years ago, I guess it was.
If not more now.
If not more than that. So while others kind of tend to follow the leader, we're pleased to know that Chatham Township has been a leader in this arena.
And Kurt, if I may, that was really through great work of our lawyer, Mr. Cruz, our township attorney, after a little bit of a how are we gonna do this and how are we gonna do it right, as an expert in municipal land use. That was certainly the template for other towns to get on board and figure it out. And through this coalition of towns that later came about, and through some shared costs, hiring an attorney that specializes in this field, took that, certainly that ordinance that we had passed on land use and expanded upon it. So I just want to thank Mr. Cruz for really initiating this work. I believe it was the first in the state that addressed that issue. So once again, thank you for your work, and
thank you, Albert.
and now John's going to tell us how it can even be better.
It can be better.
Are you getting double time for this?
No, splitting time.
Killing everybody.
Not now. Are we ready for the discussion?
We are. I briefly introduced what we're going to discuss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so basically, as the committee knows, the township is part of the Municipal Pilgrim Pipeline Group, and the group forwarded us to review a model ordinance to adopt by the member municipalities. And basically, the township currently regulates or prohibits the installation of a pipeline within residential areas. And basically, that's just a general prohibition within the entire municipality. There's just no way to install it given that constraint. So the group's approach was to adopt an ordinance that would allow conditional uses to permit the installation of pipelines within non-residential areas. And when you apply, and the intent is that to make an ordinance that's defendable, it's not just a simple total prohibition, you allow conditional approval. When I reviewed the ordinance, the first thing that jumped out at me is that we're really not accomplishing anything because our commercial district is so small, and so you're basically putting a conditional approval on and the recommended conditions. It's still a prohibition because you can't. It's just not practical. And again, I'm not. My recommendation or suggestion here is not from a legal perspective. It's purely from engineering and a planning perspective of how I interpret how this ordinance would be viewed. And it's just, frankly, again, it's not really accomplishing giving the pipeline an opportunity to actually instruct the pipeline. All it's done is prohibiting it in the location. So I looked at it from a different perspective, and I started to draft an ordinance. It is not in final state. I didn't want to go too far because if I'm off base with the committee, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. But I do want to work on it more, add definitions, do a lot more, talk to Greg Impink. But the basic thought that I had was to create an ordinance that not just focuses on the transmission pipelines. I thought it would be a stronger position to incorporate more provisions and on how we manage petroleum and hazardous materials throughout the entire township. And how I looked at it is looking at it as a watershed protection ordinance. And we already have an overlay district, and that's what I provided to you. That map that I provided is an overlay district. We already regulate stormwater within the Great Swamp Overlay District. Very stringent, more stringent than the state requirements, and there's clearly a distinction between the Great Swamp Overlay versus how we regulate stormwater in the Passaic Basin. And so we've already established in Chatham Township that there is an emphasis on protecting water within the Great Swamp watershed. It has always been. We've been doing it for years. And so my suggestion is that we incorporate a watershed protection ordinance that distinguishes regulations in the Great Swamp and regulations in the Passaic Basin. And in the Great Swamp, basically, we start to regulate, keep in mind that the majority of our zoning, it's residential. It's residential homes. And we don't have industry. We have commercial property, but we don't have industry. So, prohibiting the hazardous substances is not going to impact anyone in the township, not even the commercial properties. We would adopt certainly provisions and exemptions which may be encountered in a commercial property, and I wanted to sit down with Greg Impink and talk to him about that and see what we can incorporate. So prohibiting hazardous substances throughout the entire township isn't going to impact any property owners. And then if we regulate petroleum products, again, majority of the homes are homes.
They're being serviced already by natural gas. But use of petroleum for heating oil, it's scattered. It's not predominant in the township. So adopting an ordinance that demonstrates Chatham's commitment is above and beyond looking at a transmission pipeline. We're regulating the watershed in a way of prohibiting hazardous substances and prohibiting petroleum products. And it's not uncommon. I've seen it in other ordinances of prohibiting underground storage tanks for residential use. There's options. They have natural gas. They have above ground tanks. It's a far more environmental, and it really isn't a practice that's being done right now anyway. No, frankly, I haven't seen many underground storage tanks for residentials going in, so it's not a common practice right now. So for us to prohibit it, we're not going to prohibit it from existing and make people take up the tanks. It's just going to be for the installation of new tanks is going to be prohibited. And we'll look at exemptions of carefully look at that. We don't want to create an issue on a residential property or create an issue on the commercial property. We'll have exemptions that are practical, but then the emphasis is going above and beyond and showing that there's an effort to protect the watershed above the transmission pipeline, so we can regulate hazardous substances, petroleum. And then I also wanted in the same ordinance of the watershed protection, relocate the watershed, the Great Swamp Overlay District into this, and that just reinforces this ordinance is that we're protecting the watershed beyond more than just the pipelines. We demonstrate that how critical and stringent we regulate stormwater, and then. So basically, with that said, the difference basically between the Great Swamp Overlay and the Passaic Basin would be far more critical stormwater provisions for the Great Swamp Overlay, which we're not changing. I'm just incorporating into yours, and then stormwater provisions for the Passaic is going to change. So this ordinance is not going to change stormwater provisions, but it's going to emphasize the difference of the two in this particular ordinance. Transmission pipelines will be prohibited within the Great Swamp Overlay District, and the argument and position would be is that it's a watershed to a national refuge. There's threatened and endangered species, highly environmentally sensitive area. It is an area that's inappropriate, and we can easily make that argument that it's an environmentally sensitive area. In the Passaic Basin, we would permit it. And it's, again, it's not an ideal situation, but we would make it a conditional approval within the Passaic. And in the Passaic, we would make it very stringent requirements that they have to meet. The tank would have, the pipeline would have to meet a lot of technical standards, has to be double walled, have to be, I also added a provision that even if the secondary liner fails, it cannot impact environmental receptors within 48 hours, which basically means that they're going to not only make it double wall, but they have to surround it in clay to make sure that it gives it even more environmental protections. And then they were looking at setback issues from habitable structures, and so it's not going to make, the conditional use is not going to be presenting something that's impossible to meet, but it's going to be a difficult, very, very highly technical installation, and the permitting aspect is going to be very intense of what they need to do to actually permit it. The conditions that I started to write up, you can see it's just far more stringent than what's required in the model ordinance. I emphasize more on the technical aspect and also on the permitting aspect to make it a very thorough process. That's kind of the big picture. Like I said, I would like to have a little bit more time, but I didn't want to spend that time on this if the committee really felt like, let's just go with the model ordinance and be done with it. But if you wanted to go this approach, I'll spend more time.
Yeah, as I introduced it, John, I think, I was saying basically, we could have gone with the model ordinance and, just rubber stamped it, but that's not the way we do things in Chatham Township. And we want to put more teeth in this. And it's another example of why we're going to do everything we can from a committee perspective to stop the Pilgrim Pipeline from coming to town. So I would be in favor for you to continue your work. I think you've done a great job so far, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this and really researching this and finding out how to, as I said, put teeth into this to really make it tailored to Chatham Township and make a difference. So I appreciate that, and I would encourage you to continue and open the floor for other comments from the committee.
Does it seem possible from a technical perspective that they could come in and reroute a pipeline through the Passaic River watershed area and do it along the ridge there, et cetera. I know, I mean, obviously, we're looking at homes in the green and homes in the blue. We've got people who live in the blue. We've got people who live in the Passaic River watershed, and certainly they'd be as adamant about having a pipeline go through their protected area as somebody who lives close to the Great Swamp. So is it even practical or likely that a corporation would say that was a good investment?
Well, we could certainly take the position it's prohibited, and that's the concern is that we flat out prohibit it. It's going to be challenged, and we may not be defendable in court. But certainly, if we can impose very highly technical requirements that they have to make, that you know has all the bells and whistles, that it's going to be very expensive to install it in this location, plus the permitting aspect and the maps that we want prepared, the emergency response plans, and all this information that will be supported with an application. It's not impossible to not make this work, but it's going to be a lot of work to get this permitted through this area.
So, John, protecting the watershed obviously is a great idea. I just want to come back on making it, prohibiting, or maybe that's not the right word, but making it more stringent. I just want to come back originally to Albert and look at this from an overall perspective, right? Because I think when we originally talked about crafting the ordinance, it was a question of less is more. If you start going into too many details or making a checklist of items, the challenges to what you're doing go up from a legal precedent. And certainly the idea was, we put our residents through a great deal of due diligence when they come before the zoning board or planning board, et cetera. And certainly a commercial entity that wanted to put a pipeline through should at least at a minimum have to go through that same process. Are we crossing the lines from a standpoint of what we want to do as a town? Sounds really good to me, but now what we want to do as a town of, as one town of 39 towns, does that pose an issue for us legally?
My understanding of what the engineer is proposing is to tailor the model ordinance to Chatham Township and make the requirements more consistent with the geography, the hydrology in Chatham Township. There are only so many places that the pipeline can go through. I think one thing to consider on the map while you have the overlay of the two districts is where do the electric transmission lines go through? Because in all likelihood, or what I understood the plan was going to be, is that transmission lines were going to be utilized, those rights of way, and perhaps other rights of way. So I think it may be useful to superimpose on this map where those transmission lines are. But in answer to your question, Mr. Sullivan, I think what Mr. Rushke is asking for is permission to go forward. I think once he goes forward and explores these ideas, he and I will discuss them, I'll review them, and we'll make some judgments. So all of the things that have been discussed tonight and explained may not end up in the final ordinance. I don't know until John puts his thoughts together on paper and moves forward if we can explore them. But I think what he's asking for is, can he go forward along this theme? And then, the final product is obviously to be developed.
Well, I'm in support of that.
Yeah, the one thing that when I looked at this is that absolutely they're going to try and go along the power lines, and the power lines do go through the Great Swamp, and I feel I could be more, I can defend more to prohibit the pipeline in the Great Swamp due to those water quality issues and those protections versus an argument regarding conditional use in a commercial zone. If you're opening it up into a commercial zone, if I was on the other side of the table, I would be starting to make an argument, well, you know, you're allowed in a commercial zone, these high tension wires are very wide, they look commercial, you have high tension lines there. I would start to assimilate that, you know, this is almost, you should be considered, you should have rezoned these high tension wires as a commercial and allow them in these zones. And that would be my argument if I was, you know, making a point with it. So I see that opening it up to allowing it on commercial properties in our case is you know, could open other doors. I just felt that, you know, making a position regarding watershed protection and showing more than just pipeline protection and having an ordinance called, you know, for transmission pipelines. It's called watershed protection, and that's what the focus is. And it shows it's not only that we're attacking the pipeline, but we're taking a serious commitment within the township, in the township, for watershed protection through stormwater management, through regulating not just pipelines, but regulating underground storage tanks everywhere. And it just shows a different level of commitment than just saying no to pipelines.
Understood.
John, what's the nature of the underground structure that's there already along the power lines? There's an underground
There's natural gas.
natural
There's
gas.
natural gas there
Right.
already.
And so the environmental implications of that are dramatically different
Yeah,
than an
one of the
oil
focus.
pipeline.
Yeah, one of I am working on, you know, I'm focusing very closely on a state statute for discharge of petroleum and other hazardous substance rules, and a lot of the things that I'm requiring is for a pipeline is the same what New Jersey requires for major facilities, major refineries, major things. So it's not like you can relate to the requirements that I'm imposing that are required to you know, a state standard. So it's not like I'm making these up. I'm applying something that the state's already applying to major facilities, and I'm applying it to pipelines in a very environmental sensitive area. Even the watershed, the Passaic watershed is a very environmentally sensitive area because the Passaic River has certain qualities that need it. So it's just, I can make a very strong argument regarding the Great Swamp watershed, the national refuge, threatened endangered species, of prohibiting it there, but, you know, putting in the Passaic, it's still an environmentally sensitive area, and it requires a lot of technical oversight to make sure that it can be installed properly.
So the existence of a natural gas pipeline doesn't in any way impact what we're trying to do here regarding petroleum products?
Yeah, again, we're going to regulate petroleum and hazardous substances, and under those state standards, those are not, natural gas is not considered a hazardous substance.
Okay.
So that's following their definition also of hazardous substances.
Okay.
Great. I like what you're doing. I mean, I definitely agree with what you just said about we don't want to shortchange the Passaic River watershed need to be protected as well. I mean, it's certainly a source of drinking water, and you know, and any problem there would be a nightmare downstream and has major impacts.
Which again justifies the highly technical requirements that we're imposing.
Mm-hmm. I guess my next question will be for Albert, and if you have the answer now, or if you going forward with John, if you just kind of look at it from that perspective as well. But is the basic concept correct that it's almost counterintuitive by saying that we're going to take it away from being an outright prohibition, we're going to make it a conditional use in the Passaic River watershed, and that in fact would make it more defensible as a precaution and as a environmental protection for Chatham Township. Is that your experience, or can you look into that further? That strategy actually is accurate?
Well, a conditional use means the use is permitted in that zone, subject to the applicant meeting those conditions, as opposed to a prohibition that says it cannot be done. So a conditional use does allow, and it's presumed that it should be allowed in that area if the applicant meets the various conditions that are attached. The test here is really whether or not your action is arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. That's the test of any ordinance or any legislative act that you take. So that is, I think, what the engineer's trying to put forth is that the action is not arbitrary, not capricious, not unreasonable, that it is based upon a sound scientific basis, the protection of these two watersheds. That's the analysis. But again, subject to John preparing the ordinance and me sitting and looking at it and weighing the various options, it's hard for me to say that now, but really is your action arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable? And John is trying to make sure that there's sufficient information to withstand that type of challenge.
I think with that explanation, I definitely would support the idea of looking, proceeding, going forward with it.
How does what you're working on now impact or negate or accentuate or affirm what we've already done 3 years ago? Because obviously we have the ordinance that you did work so hard on with Mayor Sullivan and you. And
that ordinance would be repealed. This would substitute for that.
So this supersedes and the other one comes right off the books?
It would be, this ordinance would have a section in it specifically repealing that prior ordinance. Because they'd be in conflict.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I support the idea, so I think the approach is good, and I think you should keep going. Keep the research.
All right, John.
Okay.
The committee has spoken. So thank you again, John. Any other discussion items? Anything else you want to talk about?
Good.
All right, we're now open up for hearing of citizens. Anyone wants to come forward? Tom? You're good? Okay. We'll close out the hearing of citizens. We're going to break into executive session. Greg, you want to read that first, please? Just check. Okay.
Resolution 2017-P-13, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded, whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15. B, property acquisition, open space, and C, personnel, public works. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
A motion to approve?
Mr.
I'm sorry?
One clarification.
Sure.
Item 2, property acquisition.
Yeah.
That would be off the agenda. You've already acted on it, on that ordinance.
Can we just continue to talk about
So there's no need to have any.
Thank you. So noted.
There's 1 and 3.
1 and 3. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Solon?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
And Mayor Ritter.
Yes.
We are going to be asking for action on the personnel matter.
All right. Perfect.